Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to GameCube Gallery episode number 3. In GameCube Gallery, we are taking a look at the GameCube library, one game at a time. We're going to talk about the game's history, the sales, the price, the critical reception, all that good stuff. And in today's episode, we are taking a look at 13, or XIII as I've heard some people call it, but it's called 13. 13 is a cel-shaded comic book style first-person shooter published and developed by Ubisoft, and it was released on the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox. This is a very interesting game that I consider to be a hidden gem, so be sure and hit that subscribe button so that you can join the RetroWolf family, and let's take a look at 13 in GameCube Gallery episode number 3. XIII was developed and published by Ubisoft, or as some people like to pronounce it, Ubisoft. I personally pronounce it Ubisoft. Let me know in the comments down below how you pronounce it, because it seems to be debated amongst scholars. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire history of Ubisoft, because that would take a long time and that would be a very long video. Almost all gamers are aware of Ubisoft because they're one of the largest video game publishers and developers in the world. Ubisoft has developed and published some of the most well-known video game franchises of all time, such as Rayman, a variety of Tom Clancy games such as Rainbow Six, Splinter Cell, and Ghost Recon, Beyond Good and Evil, Prince of Persia, Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, Just Dance, Red Steel, Zombie U, 2 South Park RPGs, Trials, Watch Dogs, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and many, many more. They are just a mega publisher and developer in the gaming industry. When Ubisoft decided to develop a game based off of a 1984 Belgian comic called 13 by Jean Van Ham, it was unlike anything anybody has ever seen from the gaming giant. Developed using the Unreal technology, 13's cel-shaded comic book style graphics were truly a sight to behold. This was during an era when cel-shaded games were incredibly popular, as you had many other cel-shaded games coming out in the years prior to and after 13. Games such as Cell Damage, Bomberman Generation, Bomberman Jetters, Dragon Ball Z Budokai, The Wind Waker, Black and Bruised, Go-Go Hypergrind, Beautiful Joe, and many, many others. Now, in a way, 13 was Ubisoft trying to capitalize on the current trend in gaming, but they didn't do it in a forced way. It actually made sense because they were adapting a graphic novel into a video game, so cel-shaded comic book style graphics just made sense for this game. It fit and it was perfect. Now, this was also during an era when first-person shooters were absolutely flooding the market, so it was really refreshing to see a game such as 13, which had a completely different direction and art style than a lot of the other first-person shooters that were releasing during that time. With an extensive and fun single-player campaign, several multiplayer modes, and a unique art style, Ubisoft seemingly had a winner on their hands with this very cool first-person shooter. Sadly, it didn't quite go as well as they wanted it to. Now, 13 was originally slated to release in the first quarter of 2003 and ended up being delayed until the third quarter of 2003, but didn't release until the fourth quarter of 2003 on November 25th on the Nintendo GameCube in North America. Now, the strange thing is the Xbox and PS2 versions were released on November 18th, 7 days prior to the GameCube version. I'm not really sure what's up with that. Now, I couldn't find any supporting data on this, but I'm pretty sure the suggested MSRP on this game at the time of release was probably $59.99, like a lot of other games were and still are to this day. Now, something pretty cool that Ubisoft did for this game is through certain retailers, as a pre-order bonus, you could actually get a physical copy of the soundtrack for the game on an audio CD. And the soundtrack in this game is really cool. It's full of really funky and jazzy tunes and progressive hip-hop tunes. It's all instrumental, and it really fits the aesthetic of the game really well. And you can currently buy this soundtrack brand new on Amazon and eBay for anywhere from 15 to 25 bucks. I actually just bought a copy prior to filming this video because I wanted to add it to the collection. I got it for 15 bucks brand new with free shipping on eBay. So as of right now, it's not super expensive. So if you want to snatch that up to add to your collection, I suggest doing it sooner rather than later. Now, another cool thing about 13 is Ubisoft actually got some pretty big name actors to do voices in this game. For example, they had David Duchovny playing the main character, the main protagonist, 13. And David Duchovny, of course, is known for playing Mulder in the X-Files. And in addition to that, they got Adam West to play a character named General Carrington, another major character in the game. And Adam West is, of course, known for playing Batman in the 60s, and he has a very distinct voice. Now, although there was never a sequel, so to speak, for 13, in 2011 there was a new 13 game that was released called 13 The Lost Identity, and it was released on iOS and PC. Now, what sucks about it is it wasn't a first-person shooter. It was like an interactive puzzle game with some story elements or something like that, and ultimately it was a disappointment because all the fans of the original 13 really wanted a sequel that was more of a first-person shooter. However, it's not all doom and gloom. We actually have some good news. Although we're not getting a sequel to 13, it was recently announced that we're going to get a full remake of 13 from Microids and PlayMagic Ltd. And that's going to be releasing on November 13th of 2019, this year, on the Nintendo Switch, the Xbox One, the PS4, Mac, and PC. This is nearly 16 years after the original game. And from what it sounds like, they're going to be modernizing the graphics, the animation, the sounds, the gameplay. So this sounds like it's going to be a true remake and not just like a HD remaster. It sounds like they're just redoing the entire game while also staying faithful to the original. And this is very exciting because I'm such a big fan of this game. So I cannot wait until this remake releases. I can't wait till we get to see more about it. We haven't seen any gameplay. We haven't seen any cinematics. All we've seen is a logo and the knowledge that they're remaking it. So I'm very excited to find out more. Hopefully at E3 in a week or two we'll find out more. And I'm definitely picking this up on day one. And you'll probably see something on the channel about it as well. 13 actually had some pretty good critical reception. On Metacritic.com it has a current critic average of 73 out of 100. And it has a current user average of 76 out of 100. The critic average is out of 27 critic reviews, and the user average is currently out of 25 user reviews. So in my mind, anything over 70 or anything over 7 out of 10 or 70 out of 100, whatever your range is, anything above that to me is a very good indicator that you've got a very solid and good game on your hands. So overall it scored well and had great reception from both critics and gamers. The lowest end of the critics score was 58, with the highest end being 100, with an 89 right below that. And then it kind of varies in between the two scores to give you the overall average. The game reviewed well, and that makes me happy, and it makes sense because it's a very good game. Now here's where things start to get a little bad, and that has to do with how 13 sold, because it didn't sell very well. The GameCube version sold roughly 70,000 copies in North America. The Xbox version sold roughly 160,000 copies in North America, and the PS2 version sold roughly 280,000 copies in North America. So the PS2 version sold the best, which makes sense because, you know, PS2 was crushing it during that generation. It also makes sense that the Xbox sold the second best, and it makes sense that the GameCube sold the worst because the GameCube didn't really sell all that well, even though it was a great console. So sadly, sales for 13 were not very good, and ultimately that disappointed Ubisoft, and that's probably why we never got a sequel to 13. Heck, even the remake is coming from a completely different company. So I assume at some point Ubisoft sold the rights for the game franchise to another company. I didn't really dig into that too much, but that's what I'm going to assume. Now Ubisoft had this to say about the sales, and I'm going to read a quote here that I have in front of me. So here's what they had to say. In a very competitive year-end market, sales of new brands such as Beyond Good and Evil and 13, products which had been heavily marketed, were lower than the early December forecasts. We have learned from the launches of Beyond Good and Evil and 13, two new brands launched in a very competitive market dominated by established brands. So as you can see, Ubisoft, they over forecasted how 13 and Beyond Good and Evil were going to sell, and ultimately it had a negative impact on Ubisoft's sales forecast, which is such a shame because 13 is a really good game. Beyond Good and Evil is an amazing game. I can't wait to do an episode on that game. It's just such a shame, and they even heavily marketed the game. I mean, as I was doing research, I found a ton of articles on websites such as IGN and GameSpot and other places about 13 prior to its release. There were trailers. I mean, the game was marketed pretty well. It may be the visuals. Maybe the visuals turn people off. It's hard to say, but it's more than likely because of what Ubisoft said. The game entered a very competitive market full of tons of other first-person shooters that were incredibly popular, and I would say ultimately that's what led to 13 not selling very well. Now let's talk about what the price currently is on the GameCube version. Now at the time of this video, PriceCharting.com currently has the GameCube version of 13 listed at an average of roughly $10 loose, $15 complete, and $39 new. The price isn't too bad right now. I'm currently seeing it listed on eBay with current listings anywhere from $14 to $33. And looking through some of the sold listings on eBay, I'm seeing it sell anywhere from $12 to $19. And these are in various states of loose to complete to no manual and various conditions and things of that nature. The ultimate takeaway here is that 13 on the GameCube is not very expensive right now, even though there aren't very many copies of the game out there. There are probably only around 70,000 copies out there that were sold, possibly more. It's hard to say for sure, but as of right now, it's not super expensive. It is a pretty uncommon game though. You don't see this game very often. I've only seen it in a retail setting a couple of times. You see it online a lot on eBay and things like that, but it's not a game that you come across every day, at least on the GameCube. Alright, let's get into what I think about 13 and the game as a whole. In 13, you play as a man who has woken up on a beach with amnesia and wounded, and all you have is a mysterious number 13 tattooed on you and a key to a safety deposit box. And this is right after the president has been assassinated and the country is in chaos. And you set off on a journey to rediscover your past and put together the pieces, because you are a part of this huge conspiracy involving a presidential assassination. Now let's start with talking about the visuals in 13, because I'm kind of conflicted on it, right? Back when the game came out, the visuals were really, really cool, but to be honest with you, they don't really hold up today. And I'm even playing the game using an HDMI upscaler that upscales it to at least 480i, and even though it does clean up the visuals a little bit, and the game is more than playable, I can more than make out, you know, everything in the game. I can see what I'm doing and all the objects and everything. I think in particular the character models are a little blurry, a little muddy looking. They don't really look that great, so I can't really say that the cel shaded graphics in this game held up even today, unlike where other cel shaded games like Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker, for example, the cel shaded graphics in that game hold up even today, but 13 unfortunately does not. I still like the graphics a lot. I think they look really good. They really fit the aesthetic of the game, and they're true to the graphic novel. They do some really cool stuff in this game, you know, because they wanted it to look like a comic book as well. So you'll have story beats that take place in comic book panels, and you know, you'll see like people talking, and they're, you know, like a comic book looking dialogue box will pop up, and you'll see like visual representations of sound effects and guns shooting, and so it's really cool. And you know, sometimes when you shoot people, you'll see like a comic book little panel pop up that zooms in on them being killed by you. So I mean, there's a lot of cool little touches to the graphics and the visual style that really lead to this game being unique outside of the cel shaded, which a lot of games were doing in that era. The whole comic book aspect of the visuals were very unique. All in all, I like the visuals. They just don't really hold up today as good as a game like The Wind Waker does. Now, the sound and music in the game. So the music is very dynamic. Again, it's very jazzy, kind of funky, with varied tempos and rhythms and a little chaotic at times. And what's great about the music is when you're not in combat, it's not very noticeable. The volume's almost down a little bit, but then once you get in combat, the music really kicks into high gear and gets more punchy and chaotic. So it's kind of dynamic to what's going on in the game, and I like that. I also think the sound effects are really good. The gunshots sound good. They have kind of an echo. They sound relatively realistic. The sound design and the music in the game is top notch, and I really like it, and it helps to make the game more immersive. Now the voice acting, some of the voice acting is hit or miss. Adam West absolutely kills it. David Duchovny is the main character. You know, he does okay, and some of the other side characters do pretty good, but Adam West as General Carrington is definitely the star of the game, and he definitely kills it with that unique voice that Adam West has. Now, this is a fairly long single-player campaign. There are, I believe, 32 missions to play through. They vary in length and complexity. Some are shorter, some are longer. But it's a pretty lengthy game. I mean, I beat it back in the day. Whenever I originally had a GameCube, whenever I was a teenager, I beat the game, and it seems like it took me a while. And for the purposes of this video, I played through the first 11 or 12 missions just to, get myself reminded of how the gameplay is and how the game plays and everything. And I probably played it for, a good 3 to 4 hours, if not more than that, just to get through those 11 missions. So you're looking at a game that probably takes anywhere from 10 to 12 hours, is just an estimate. I haven't actually looked it up, but it's fun. I mean, it's long, it's a good, robust, long single-player campaign with a lot of variety in environments. You'll be in places such as snowy mountains, forests, military bases, rooftops in cities. So there's a lot of variety in the environments. They did a really good job with mission variety. There is variety in some of the things that you do during the missions, some of your objectives and your goals, like rescue a hostage or escort somebody to safety, or turn on generators so that you can power down a security system. There's a lot of different things that you do throughout the missions, and a lot of variety. And I like that in a game, especially a first-person shooter. Now, there's also a lot of variety in the guns and weapons in the game. You have pistols, revolvers, shotguns, rifles, assault rifles, sniper rifles, crossbow. Of course, you have a knife, grenades, harpoon gun, rocket launcher. So there's a lot of variety, and your weapon loadout kind of changes depending on the mission. Some missions you'll start out with no weapons at all. Some missions you'll start out with a certain weapon set. But in just about every mission you'll find new weapons as you go along. But you pretty much never have the same weapon set between missions. There are some missions that are like a part 1, part 2, part 3 style, where this mission's part 1, this one's part 2, part 3. Missions like that, you usually have the same weapon loadout throughout the entire story of that mission set. But for the most part, there's a decent variety in the weapons, and you'll find yourself with a decent variety of loadouts throughout the game. And a lot of the weapons have secondary fire functions, such as one of the machine guns will shoot grenades with the secondary fire button. Sniper rifle, the secondary fire button activates your scope. There is a revolver where the secondary fire button causes you to fire off 2 shots back to back really fast. There's some pretty decent variety in the combat in that. And then you also acquire other items such as med kits to heal yourself with, lock picks, magnetic key cards. You have a grappling hook you can use, which is pretty cool in certain moments. So there's even a little bit more variety there with some of those secondary items that you get. Now, another thing that doesn't quite hold up, and honestly this is true of a lot of first-person shooters from the GameCube, PS2, Xbox era, and it's the controls. The controls and the gameplay. And maybe it's just because I'm now spoiled to modern shooters and going back and playing an older shooter like this. It takes some getting used to. It took me a few missions before I finally got comfortable with it, and I had to turn the sensitivity way up because it was way too stiff and slow, and I'm used to the buttery, smooth, fast precision and sensitivity of current modern shooters. So by turning the sensitivity way up on this game, it definitely helped. It does have sort of an auto aim, and that helps as well. But once you play a few missions and readjust yourself to these kind of older, more clunky, slower first-person shooter controls, it's not that bad. I'm not going to dock it points because at the time the controls, they would have been good at the time. To me, it's not a negative. It's just games have gotten better. But all in all, it controls well. You can crouch to sneak up on enemies. There's a jump button, of course, a reload button. There's 2 different buttons to swap weapons. You press the Y button to swap to the left weapon, the X button to swap to the right weapon, and go in that direction throughout the weapons that you currently have. The B button is your secondary fire button. Then the A button is your action button, and then of course you've got your fire button, and then you use the sticks to aim. D-pad is used to swap between your different items, and you press up on the D-pad to heal using a med kit. One thing that kind of irritates me about this game is it really feels like the enemies almost never miss. They have just ridiculously good accuracy. Now you can help mitigate this by moving side to side when you're being shot at, and jumping around helps as well. It feels like it's harder to hit the enemies than it is them to hit you, and it's, you know, it's not a huge deal. You know, it's not a game breaker. It's something to be aware of while you play this game. You do want to save often. There are checkpoints in the missions, and when you save, I think if you leave the mission, I think it will start you all the way at the beginning. But of course, if you die and you've made it to a checkpoint, it'll kick you back to the checkpoint. So and the checkpoints are relatively fair and spaced pretty decently. But all in all, the gameplay is fun. You can't really run and gun in this game super fast. You got to kind of be a little tactical, take your time, use cover. And stealth is good in this game if you can utilize stealth a little bit to kind of trim the herd down, so to speak, to give you an upper advantage. I had a lot of fun playing through the first 11 or 12 missions prior to filming this video, and I kind of want to go back and play through the rest, but I think I'm going to wait for the remake to come out and just play through the remake and see how the remake stacks up against the original. I may do a video doing a comparison of the two once the remake comes out. Now the game also features up to 4-player split-screen multiplayer. Now sadly I didn't really get a chance to try that out. From what I understand, it's okay. It's not anything groundbreaking. You probably gonna want to play Halo instead, for example. But it's, you know, it's there. The multiplayer modes are Deathmatch, Team Deathmatch, Capture the Flag, and a mode called the Hunt. Now the Hunt sounds pretty interesting. There's like a running target that you're chasing and trying to shoot, trying to kill, and the more you shoot that target, the more points you get. But apparently if you touch the running target, you die. So that sounds pretty interesting. So I may try out the multiplayer at some point. I actually never even played the multiplayer back in the day either. I just played through the single player. And that is what I would recommend for this game, is for you to pick it up on either the PS2, Xbox, or the GameCube and play through the single player campaign. Don't let the controls turn you off. Just give it a few missions to get used to the controls. They're not that bad once you get used to them, and you will have a lot of fun with this game. There are some frustrating moments, I'm not going to lie. There are some frustratingly difficult moments in this game, but if you stick with it, you'll get through them. Just save your med kits as much as you can. Try not to get hit. Having a good supply of med kits is absolutely crucial in this game. But all in all, I feel like 13 is a really fun, really good, and unique first-person shooter on the GameCube. I consider it a hidden gem because I don't hear a lot of people talking about it, and I definitely recommend this game to you all. Thank you for watching GameCube Gallery episode number 3 on 13. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure and hit that like button and subscribe so that you can join the RetroWolf88 family and not miss future content like this. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about 13. Also, let me know in the comments down below what game you would like to see me do a video on in the future. Now, I will go ahead and tell you, episode number 4 is already decided, as is probably episode number 5. I did a poll on Instagram between Freedom Fighters and Spartan Total Warrior, and Freedom Fighters won by a long shot. So episode number 4 of GameCube Gallery, I'm officially announcing it here, is going to be on Freedom Fighters, and episode 5 may be on Spartan Total Warrior. I haven't fully decided yet. Until next time, keep playing games and having a good time. Check out 13, and I will see you all in the next video. I should probably move this roll of toilet paper off the camera. That might look a little weird if that's in the camera.